Welcome to the Earning Freedom Program. Today we're continuing on with our Mastermind Straight A Guide course. I'm really excited to share this interview with my friend Seth Ferranti, who's just an awesome dude who not only went through a quarter century in prison, but came back really strong with his dignity intact, pursuing his dream and building his career. I think you're going to find real interest in his story because we're going to hear about how he used his time in prison, always thinking about the career he wanted to build. Tell us a little bit about what brought you into the prison system, Seth.
Basically, I got involved in drugs probably at a real young age, around 13, just doing drugs. And that eventually led to me selling drugs by the time I was 16. And, by the time I was 19, I was supplying 15 colleges in 5 states. And in 1991, I got indicted federally on a CCE charge.
CCE charge. And what were you facing on that charge?
I was facing 20 to life.
And you ended up getting what? Did you go to trial or did you plead guilty?
Actually, I pled guilty, and then I took off, and I was a fugitive for 2 years. And when I got caught, I got sentenced to 304 months.
And because you had that record of escape or being a fugitive, they put you in a high security prison as a young man with about a quarter century to serve. Tell us a little bit about your mindset when you first went into the prison.
When I got in there, I didn't really know what direction I did. It was the first time I was, completely off drugs. So I'm sitting in prison, and I really, was like on a discovery to find myself and who I was.
And what were you thinking about? How were you going to adjust? How did you expect to adjust through that 25 years when you first started?
When you get that sentence, you get that 25 years, it comes down. So then I'm in this, I'm in this scary environment with all these people, that I'm not sure what they're about. I'm not sure, what they're going to do. You hear all this stuff about prisons. So, I'd say the first couple of years, I kind of just stuck to myself because I was trying to figure out who I wanted to be in this prison world. I knew I had a lot of time to do. So, I didn't want to be considered, like a punk or this or that or derogatory terms, which people in prison come up with to label people. So I didn't want to be any of that. But at the same time, I was kind of, walking a tightrope because, I wanted to do things and I wanted to have a future. But at the same time, I wanted to be respected in the prison yard. So, it was a very kind of trying time for me to kind of figure out who I was and what direction I was going to go with doing all this time in the confines where I was at.
Did that conflict of wanting to prepare for a future and have a future while at the same time wanting to establish a prison reputation and walk that line of a quarter century, did that cause any type of problems for you in those beginning years?
Oh yeah, just because prison, it's just like a real sick and twisted world. And you might do things in prison that you wouldn't do on the street, basically just to survive. And so it was a conflict for me because, you got all your peers, everybody's there, you're in the block, everybody's watching you to see how you're going to react, but at the same time, I got these aspirations and dreams. I want to get out and be successful. I don't want to do more stuff to get in prison. I don't want to, violate or get more time or get myself in that situation. But it was just a real, delicate situation because you just have to be real careful. I was real careful who I was involved in, who I let in my circle, and different stuff like that.
So as you grew through the prison or started to mature, tell us a little bit about how your adjustment changed and what you started to do.
Well, I think the first important step I did was I enrolled in college classes. I took correspondence courses. I got my AA degree through Penn State. I got my BA degree through the University of Iowa, and I got my master's degree eventually through California State University. And it's not like I did this stuff overnight. This is like I don't think I got my master's degree until almost 2010. So for me, this was like a 17-year journey in school. And I found when I really got involved in school stuff and, what they call programming or whatever in prison, it kind of took some of my time that I might have just been hanging out or in the TV room or hanging out with the guys and getting in trouble or doing stuff I wasn't supposed to because I had these deadlines. I had these papers I had to read, so I stayed a lot in the law library, typing up stuff and just, in my room a lot, studying, and reading the materials and gaining knowledge because they can take away years of your life while you're in prison, and they can take away all the material things. But any type of knowledge or wisdom you get or self-improvement, no one can take that away.
So you say that you got into these universities. A lot of guys in prison don't realize how to find a university. Tell us a little bit about the action steps you took to go from having this vision of wanting to prepare, or this aspiration, if you said, of coming back successfully. What type of action steps did you have to take in order to even find universities that would allow you to study?
So all you got to do, like I would go to the resource section in the library, and I would start looking, and I would start writing these places, these different universities, and I would find places that I could get degrees. I would find places that were affordable, that I could afford, and I would find places that you could do the stuff correspondence.
And when you started getting those books in, tell us a little bit about how you were able to tune out all of the different competing demands for your time so that you could focus on getting an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, and a master's degree. Because it's hard enough to get a university degree outside, but to get one in prison really takes discipline. Tell us your process for being able to stay focused on earning university degrees while you were inside.
I would just say for me, first you have to want it more than you don't want it. I really wanted it. I wanted to improve myself. I wanted to do, different things with my life. I saw a light at the end of the tunnel, so I didn't want to fall into despair and all that. And then, prison, anybody who's been in prison can be really boring, man. So, it was really easy to kind of focus on something that was improving myself. Plus, I'm interested in history. I'm interested in writing. I have a lot of interest in those areas, literature and stuff like that. So reading the books and accomplishing something was really important to me. So I'm not saying it was easy, because in prison, anybody that's been in prison, it's like a constant din of noise in the block, always types of stuff going on, people yelling and screaming. So, a lot of times I would just put my headphones on, if I had a good radio station, or later when they had the MP3s, I would listen to that, and I would just kind of, put the blinders on, man, and focus on what was right for my future instead of what was going on in the penitentiary.
And how did having those very clear paths to getting a university degree, how did that help you stay focused on that light that you described when you had multiple decades in prison to serve?
I think really getting the college degrees, it gave me some positive self-worth. I felt like I was, contributing to society in my own way. I felt like I was doing something to improve myself, because really, there's not a lot of programs available in prison. So, whatever you can take, I had the option of college degrees, like through my parents who paid for it. But, even if I didn't have that option, there's different little college programs that I could have took. Maybe I couldn't have got a master's degree, but there's different stuff I could take. And it just helped me stay focused, man, because when you're in there, there's just so much temptation to do wrong. And when you don't have anything positive, then you might just focus on wrongdoing. But I found myself having the college courses and the positive stuff. It really almost anchored me, to real life instead of to prison life. Because I was corresponding with real college professors in the world. Sometimes other students, and it just made me feel. It just gave me a tremendous amount of self-worth. It made me feel valuable. It made me feel like I was a person.
Just to point out, hey, it's very few people who pursue this path. But the people who do pursue this path, they end up having a really extraordinarily successful journey through prison, and then their return to society is far more successful, and there's nobody that can articulate that better than you because of your success. So tell us a little bit about how pursuing an education influenced your life in prison, and what your thoughts were for how this educational programming was going to influence your life when you came out of prison.
I just think it's tremendously important to prepare you for your future and do something every day, that's going to count for the future. Because if you don't give yourself the tools, and the different assets or whatever you need, when you get out, you're going to go right back to the same thing, and you're going to end right back in prison.
And how did your adjustment, when you really started to get serious about your education and the goals that you were achieving in prison and taking really solid action steps that would lead you to success, tell us how that influenced your relationship with people outside, your family and the people in your support group. Tell us about that.
I think once they saw that I was making positive steps. You know, it was a process too, because I came into prison and, you know, everybody thought I was a drug dealer. I was a drug addict. You know, I kind of like, you know, disgraced my family and friends and even my community, you know, so I had to earn the trust back, man. I had to earn those relationships back. So, you know, as I was going, like the first, you know, 5 to 10 years, as I was doing this stuff, I'm sure like my parents and my family and friends, they were like, okay, you know, maybe he's doing the right thing. But at the same time, they had in the back of his mind, well, you know, he's a drug addict or he's a drug dealer. So it was really hard to fight and overcome that. You know, and I still get some of that even after doing 21 years and now being out for 3 years. I can still get some of that sometimes, you know, because people go with the, you know, the adage that, you know, tigers don't change your stripes and stuff like that. And it's true in a lot of cases, but that's something I had to fight. You know, I had to fight that stigmatism, you know, just from my own family and friends. I mean, they were proud of what I was doing, but it was still, I was fighting that stigma and trying to overcome it. And I think now, you know, now I got it where, you know, people are going to give me the benefit of the doubt. But I mean, that's something that was a long time coming, and that's something that was very hard earned. And anybody that's been in that situation, you know, they got to fight in the same battle and go through the same thing to earn that trust, not only of your friends and family and relatives, but, you know, society as a whole. You have to earn that trust back that you deserve to be a citizen, you know, and live in this world that, you know, we have, which is, you know, anybody who's been out, you know, it's way better in prison. I mean, prison sucks. Anybody that knows her knows that.
But you didn't only just do time in prison, and you didn't only go through school in prison. You had a far more successful journey than simply getting certificates or degrees. Tell us a little bit more about what you were able to accomplish during the 21 years that you served.
Well, I started writing books. This is actually, I wrote this, Prison Stories. This is like the first book I wrote. I published this in 2005, you know, and just through taking the college classes in creative writing and a lot of nonfiction, I found that, you know, and I had a lot of time. So I really kind of honed my craft as a writer. And I went on, you know, I got like 22 books out now, but these are some, this is the second one I wrote, Street Legends, Volume 1. You know, and then I did this one, Street Legends, Volume 2. And this is probably one of my most popular books, The Supreme Team. So, you know, the first Prison Stories was kind of like my prison journey, like my first 2 years, what I was going through and what I was experiencing, you know, and then I started writing more about other people. You know, I was locked up, you know, with a lot of different criminals and gangsters, and I started writing their stories. And what I was doing when I was writing their stories, because the mainstream media, you know, in the news, they always paint these pictures of these criminals or these gangsters. And, you know, some are, you know, deserved, you know, because some of these guys, I mean, I've been in there. Some of these guys are psychopath, vicious guys. They deserve to be in prison. But there's a lot of guys that were just making money. So when I started writing these books, I would take the legend, you know, and the news reports and all the, you know, all the indictment stuff. But I would try to paint a picture of the person as a human, because our criminal justice system, you know, that's what they do. They do dehumanize people so they can give them 20 or 30 years or life sentence. And, you know, I believe some people that do certain things should deserve life in prison. But for selling drugs, I don't believe that you should get life in prison. So I try to humanize a lot of these people and show, you know, whatever, that's the world they were in. You know, they did some things that they had to do, you know, but really they're not bad people. It's just a lot of areas of gray instead of just being black and white.
So there's a lot of action steps I'm hearing you took. You went into prison, had a mindset that I'm going to try and figure it out while I'm in here. After a couple of years, you decide to start going to school, preparing for an aspiration of what you wanted to do, go through education, but then you started writing, first about your own life, then you start interviewing other people around you, telling their stories. Tell us about the action steps you had to take to turn all of that work from taking a pen, writing on a piece of paper, turning that piece of paper into a sentence, those words into sentences, those sentences into paragraphs, those paragraphs into manuscripts. How do you go while you're in prison to turning those manuscripts into the types of books that you just held up for us?
Well, the first thing I did was, you know, I always tell people this all the time. The first thing you need to do, you just need to write. I mean, if you want to write a book, you got to come up with a plan, and you just have to write it. I mean, the first draft you write might not be any good, but at least you got something down. And then, you know, once I started, crafting my manuscript, like even it's like anything. I mean, I was lucky in the regard that I was taking the college classes and they were kind of, teaching me how to write and edit my own stuff. So I kind of took what I learned there and I applied it to my first book, Prison Stories. And I just edited. And then, I had my wife, I would send stuff, I would type stuff, send it out to my wife. She would scan it on the computer. She would send it back and we would continue editing back and forth. And I mean, this could be like a year and a half process for a book that we might go back and forth like 10 or 15 times before it's even ready, to show to anybody. And then what I did when I got the idea, in the late 90s, early 2000s, I got the idea to open my publishing house and publish my books. I read like about 30 books on self-publishing. And I just made a plan. I'm the type of person, anytime I do anything, like if I want to learn about real estate, if I want to learn about banking or credit cards, whatever I want to learn about, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get as many books on the subject as I can, and I'm going to read them all. And then from reading all those books, I'm going to take, I might take this part from this book, I might take this part, and I develop my own plan. Because most people, if you give yourself a basis or a foundation of the knowledge of whatever, trade or market you're trying to get into, then, you can start coming up with your own ideas and your own plan and mashing, different parts of different people's ideas that you read in books together to formulate your own thing. And that's basically what I did. And I mean, I'm still publishing today. I'm still learning. It's not something, that I got perfect the first time. We made a lot of mistakes. We had a lot of help with other people that helped us. So, it's a process, man, but it was a process that I stuck to, because what getting the college degrees taught me is it's almost like you set a goal, you set accomplishment, and you say, I want to get this AA degree, and then you have to get those 60 credits over how many years it takes, to get it. So that's what I learned. It's about setting the goal, but then it's about following through and accomplishing the goal, through whatever journey it takes you to get there. If it takes a couple years, 6 months, 3 months, if it takes 10 years, if it takes 20 years, it's about the follow through. So I felt like, that was really one of my biggest attributes, was just being able to follow through and accomplish the goals that I set for myself.
And it was the little goals that you pursued in the very beginning, such as going to school, that taught you how to write. Then by learning how to write, you were able to start actually writing for publication. And then you were able to start mastering the craft of learning how to opening a publishing company and publishing yourself from prison. That said, during your what you were just telling us, you said that your wife helped you. You said you went into prison when you were 22 years old. You had a quarter century to serve. Tell us, how does a guy hold on to a wife through that type of struggle?
Well, me and my wife, we weren't married when I went to prison. She was one of my girlfriends. I had a couple of different girlfriends, like a lot of dudes in prison. They kind of, have different girls or whatever. I mean, that's just what, people in the criminal lifestyle do. Well, not all, but that's what I did. So, actually, we got married, we got married like 2005 when I was in FCI, Gilmer. And it was just like a relationship. She was my girl, and she kind of stayed with me. And I think she really might have seen the potential and loved me more at first. But, eventually, after all the years, I realized, what a good girl I had. And that's what I was doing. I was trying to generate, do different things to try to generate a future for me and her. And for me, publishing and writing articles, that was a way that I could do it. And that was also a way, for something that we could do in common, and build, for our future. So, I mean, but I know I was pretty lucky in regard to the woman, that I got, who was my girlfriend, who I eventually married. I mean, it doesn't happen for everybody, but, luckily it happened for me.
It sure was lucky that it happened for you, and that when you had that relationship, you were able to really operate as a team where you're both supporting each other, and it kind of removes you from the prison and allows you to kind of live inside of the world through her. And you said that she was assisting you along the way, being your advocate, helping you by writing. You'd write your manuscripts, you'd send them home to to your wife. Your wife would send them back to you. You know, by working as a team, it's almost as if, yeah, you're locked up in prison, but you're really building this ladder. You're building this pathway out to successful life. And you've now been out, as you said, for 3 years. Tell us a little bit about how the decisions and the preparations you made while you were inside influenced your ability to come back to society successfully.
Well, I think probably around, around the late 90s, early 2000s is when I really decided, after I'd been in for, about 6 or 7 years, almost, 8, 9, 10 years, I was like, I got to start preparing for my future. So, I mean, every step was kind of like a little incremental step that I had to take, but it all built together. So, and even I tell people this all the year, like a lot of people tell me out here, they say, man, you do so much. How did you get out? How did you adjust after doing all that time? Because they say, a lot of people, get out, they're whacked out or this or that, or they go back to crime. And I always tell them, I mean, really it's through reading. I mean, reading is what was really big for me, to start my writing, reading all the history books. But then I tell people too, my last 2 years, all I did was I probably read like every idiot's guide or dummy's guide, to like the internet, to iPhones, to MacBooks. That's all I did my last 2 years, besides writing and stuff like that, and bringing my other plans that I had for when I got out. Because I had a big challenge. I didn't know anything about the internet. They didn't have the internet when I went in '93. They didn't have smartphones. When I was out there, they had the big phones that are like bricks. That was like the cell phones. So it was really crazy. And I kind of had to, I had to get my head around all this stuff. So I spent 2 years, like I think like the iPhone and the internet and the MacBook books, I might have read those like 3 or 4 times. So, and I was asking all types of dudes that had only been in there a couple of years, what's up with this? What's up with this? Because I just had a lot I had to get my head around. But, through my preparation and through all that, I really felt like I hit the ground running. I got out, I got 2 jobs. I was in the halfway house for 3 months. I got home confinement. I went on probation. After I was doing so good, after a year, they cut me free from probation. So, but it's not only about preparation. Everybody knows what's right and wrong. Some guys try to say, oh, I'm from here. This is what it's like. No, everybody knows what's right and wrong. So, let's get through that. Like, you don't know what's right and wrong. You know what's right and wrong. So it's not only about preparation and getting yourself ready, with wisdom and knowledge through reading and learning stuff, but it's about making a decision. You got to make a decision. You say, okay, I'm going to walk on the, right side. I'm going to be a citizen. Sometimes in prison, citizen can be used as a dirty word, like, oh, you're just a citizen. But, I found now, and even when I was in there, I would rather be a citizen and be out here and enjoy, the different things that you can do in this country and the freedoms you can have than, be a criminal or be underground and end back up in prison. Because if you keep doing criminal stuff, you're going to end back up in there. So you got to realize that. That's what I had to realize. It's not about the easy money. It's about the hard work and making relationships and networking and getting a life together, and being prepared and making the decision that says, you know what, I'm sick of this life. I'm sick of being a drug addict. I'm sick of being a criminal. I'm sick of dealing with all these, cutthroat type of people. I'm sick of being in prison. I'm sick of this dehumanizing condition. I want to go out in the world and enjoy what our world has to offer. So, once I made that decision, and I probably made that decision with about, 10, 12 years to go. So once I made that decision, I just, I started preparing, doing whatever I could do every day, learning, looking at different things, different business aspects. I learned a lot about social media, just reading articles and stuff, and books on it. Everything that I'm doing today, that the publishing, the social media stuff, the marketing, the network, all that, I learned all that in prison through reading books and articles about it.
And that's what's allowed you to come back successfully, become a best-selling author. You're also a contributing writer to numerous online publications, and you got a new movie coming out, which is pretty exciting. Can you tell us a little bit about this movie that you're doing?
I've been, for about 2 years, since I've been out, I've been working on this movie. It's called White Boy. It's about Richard Worshey Jr., who's he's in the Detroit system, or Michigan system. He's from Detroit, and he was a street legend from the mid-'80s. But basically, he's been in prison 29 years now for 8 kilos of cocaine. And I'm not going to say he kind of complicated matters, because when he was in, he cooperated with the FBI on a police corruption probe in Detroit. And that's really why he's in, because some of the people, that he helped get convicted in that police corruption probe, like their proteges or whatever are still in government in Detroit and Michigan and Wayne County, and they've been trying to keep him in. So this film we've been working on is, the number one goal to get him out, but also to expose this justice, because it's almost the drug war, man. There's so many dirty little secrets of the drug war, and now as time goes on, a lot of them are coming out, because it's really inhumane. I mean, like I say, some people, if you murder people and chop people up and molest little kids and stuff like that, maybe you deserve to go to prison for life if that's what the laws call for. But right now, most of the prisons, over 50% of the prisons is nonviolent drug dealers, like this guy Richard Wershey, who we're trying to get out, and they just bury him in there, and it becomes more of an industry instead of justice. And so through this film and through his story, we're kind of showing all this just on, just in Detroit, but the same thing that's happening in Detroit is happening all over. And this movie is premiering at a film festival in Detroit at the end of March, and then it'll be going on like a major mainstream streaming network, something like a Showtime, HBO, Netflix, Amazon or Hulu.
I want to thank you for spending this time with us today, Seth. I know that a lot of guys who are watching this inside of segregated housing units or secure prisons or schools, they really need to get inspiring stories from people like you, people who have had an aspiration of preparing themselves for success even while going through struggle, and then people who took the incremental action steps that allowed them to get from being a 22-year-old just starting in prison to becoming an accomplished best-selling author, movie producer, contributing member of society, husband, son. You're really the American success story, and I really want to thank. And you started inside of a federal prison with a quarter century to serve, but it never got you down, and that's why I wanted to share your story. Thanks so much for spending time with us.
All right, thank you. And just for everybody who doesn't know, the man Michael Santos, I was with him when we were doing time, and it was right around the time when I kind of made the jump. I was kind of leaning in the right direction, but he kind of really, showed me the way and helped me. So, he can help anybody. He helped me when I was in there. He can help anybody that's watching this. So
well, thanks so much, Seth. I'm so glad to consider you a friend and so proud to share your story with other people in prison. Together, we're going to help more guys come out successfully like you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.